Welcome to a special Avenue episode of the Alligator Podcast. I'm Elliot, your host, and today we'll be talking about Fest 19. The Fest is an underground music festival held annually in Gainesville, Florida since 2002, originally slated for October 30th to November 1st, 2020. The Fest website posted on July 6th that due to the COVID-19 outbreak, it would have to be postponed a year. Today, we'll be talking with musicians who played at Fest about their experiences and how much this festival means to Gainesville.
My name's Katrina, and I play bass and also sing in expert timing. In my daily life, I'm an artist. I'm an illustrator. I'm a freelance illustrator. But yeah, that's what I do, and we have a unique situation because we're married.
Right. And I'm Jeff Snyder. I play guitar and sing in expert timing, and in my daily life, I am an audiovisual technician.
Fest was only the second show we've played now in 2 years. Like, it's pretty crazy.
We played Fest 16, 17, 18, and 19. So we've been playing Fest for a while.
And what is different from this Fest and the other ones?
Well, obviously, because everybody is just like kind of dipping their toe in the water of like being somewhat social again. So it's a little weird, but I feel like this year was like the importance of not just the music, but like the people that we love and like our friends and the community, and just seeing everybody and like getting to hug them for the first time in 2 years. I feel like that was really different. Like, that's always there, but it just felt like so much heavier, where you're just like, I could see my friend across the field at Heartwood, and I'm just like, I have to hug you right now. Like, I've missed you so much.
Definitely. A big difference also is that other fests, there's a big international presence.
Right.
Like, bands from all over the world are there, and a lot of people couldn't travel this year.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty big difference.
Were there any bands that after you played a gig, did you ever hang back and go, oh, I can't believe this band is here, like we have to go see them? Did you ever experience that? Like, did you experience that?
Oh yeah, always at Fest, most definitely.
Oh yeah, just like being excited or stumbling upon a new band, or even just being like, oh my God, I never thought, like last time, I never thought we'd get to see Piebald.
Yeah.
Like, in there, they played like that mystery set, and we saw that. Like, so many moments like that. We're just like, holy crap, this is so cool that I'm right here watching this.
Yeah, Fest does an amazing job of like curating their lineup, that it's, bands from, there's reunion shows at Fest, bands that haven't played in 10 or 15 years, and they're getting back together. And then also just like really great, like wonderful current bands. Like, seeing Propagandhi a couple of years ago was really amazing.
Yeah.
And the Descendants, like,
Yeah.
bands that you might not get to see otherwise, especially in a town like Gainesville.
What are the qualifications to be a part of the Fest?
So if you want to play Fest, the person that runs it lives in Gainesville. His name's Tony. He's great, but I think the best way to get on Fest is to be a part of your local like punk rock scene. Like, we're not necessarily a punk band, but we would set up shows for bands that were trying to tour through Orlando. We'd play the shows with them. We'd like give them a place to stay. Like, being part of your like community and is a great way to get into the Fest community.
Yeah.
Another great way is a lot of their staff is volunteers. So if you are not playing Fest and you want to go to Fest, but you want to meet the people that run it, you can volunteer. Like,
yeah, that's like the biggest thing. If you don't get in, because there's so many bands, and not everyone's going to get in every year, but if you don't get in, like, still go. If you volunteer, you get to go for free, or if you buy a ticket, whatever. But like, it's just being part of that community. Like, it really does make a difference, and you'll enjoy yourself. Like, when we first went,
yeah,
my eyes were open, just like, holy crap, this is such an amazing place. And that's when I decided to learn to play an instrument, was because of Fest. So it's like,
Oh, really?
yeah, so it's like, even if you don't get in, like, just go. It's worth it.
That was like Fest 13.
Yeah, Fest 13.
Yeah.
And because you're a bass player, was there a certain bass player that drew you to that instrument?
I mean, throughout my life, like, yes, there have been like certain bass players that I've admired, and really like their style, but I think it was just more just wanting to be like part of it. Like, I had been for a long time, I had booked shows and I had been friends with people in bands, and like Jeff had been in a band forever, so I had seen all of that, but I just wanted to see what it was like on the other side and like see if I could do it. And just, Fest kind of really tore down those walls to make it feel like, yeah, you can. So that was a huge change for me.
What was the best part of the show?
Oh gosh, like the best part of our set.
Yeah.
um yeah, I think it's once you've started, because like waiting to play, the anxiety of just like having to wait and just like hoping everything goes well, like once you start playing and you're a couple songs in and you feel like kind of relaxed and you're like looking at each other and everyone's having a good time, and you look out into the audience and you see some of your friends like smiling, like that's kind of
Yeah,
the
like
best part
I
for me.
like I think back when we were playing like our second last song, Sleep. I looked out and people were singing the words, so that's always like really cool
Yeah.
when people like are singing back. And you get to the point where you're like Katrina said, just when you're comfortable finally after the anxiety kind of washes away.
Yeah.
That's always the best part.
What was something that really stood out like that? Like, was there something that caught your eye for like a split second that was like, whoa, that's pretty cool?
I think, I mean, I had a bunch of moments like that. I think watching Max and Signals Midwest, um, like at night, just like the way they were playing, they were so tight and just like so comfortable. And it just like the audience was like so into it. It just like, I don't know, it was just like this moment. You could kind of feel it, and it just felt special. And it was neat. Like we were just kind of standing like on the side, just like watching everything. And it was really cool.
Is there something whenever you play at Fest, is there like a tradition you always do?
Oh, well, so one of our traditions like is go to Karma Cream and get vegan breakfast.
Yes.
Wow, that's really cool. And what do you get the same thing every time, or do you like spice things up?
Well, they have like a breakfast sandwich, like one that they'll do, and it's so good.
Yeah,
So it's like, I don't know, it's a good way to start the day.
that's something we always have to do.
Yeah. Because at Fest, you have to remember like to take care of yourself, like remember to stop and eat and drink water and
Very
stuff. 'Cause
important.
it's really easy to just get like swept up, and then it's like 10 o'clock at night and you're like, holy crap, I forgot to eat. So
Yeah.
we try not to do that.
Gainesville has great food. Like I feel like
Yeah.
Gainesville has really great food
A
places.
lot of veggie vegan options.
Yeah.
Now, my last question for you is, what's the biggest takeaway from Fest 19?
Wow.
Gosh, I think it's just like that things, it's been a really shitty, obviously, like, almost 2 years at this point, but like things will move forward. There's always a way that, like art survives and music survives, and, our friends are still there, and it's okay if we have to be separate for a while because of safety or whatever. Like these things will survive and we'll get back to it when it's safe to do so. And it's just, I don't know, I really missed Fest.
Fest 19 was definitely just like, okay, things can happen again. Like that's walking away from that. I felt like there's a way to do this safely. Like everyone was really cool about wearing masks, like like people were getting tested, like vaccines weren't required because of the state, but they were still kind of like, they were really encouraged, and you didn't have to take a COVID test if you were vaccinated. So like, it was really nice to see that we could do it safely and do it again. Really.
And it's good because sometimes, like, I don't know, it's really good to remember that it's not just like a singular, selfish experience, playing in a band or playing a show or whatever. Like you really need to care about everybody else, and we're all in this together. Nobody is, higher on a pedestal than anybody else. Like it's our job to protect each other. And it was really nice, like having that feeling that everybody was working towards that at Fest.
Awesome.
Yeah, so my name is Jeremy Hunter, and my role at the fest was I was a performer under Skatune Network, which is also the name of my YouTube channel. And I also perform in the band We Are the Union, as well as hopping on stage with quite literally a million other bands this weekend.
And have you ever went to or performed at Fest before this year?
Yeah, so this would be my, let's see, 7th fest that I have been at. I've been going to Fest far longer than I have lived in Gainesville.
Was anything different this year?
Yeah, a lot of the venues were different. Not necessarily, I mean, I feel like they made the accommodations to have more outdoor spaces, but also Heartwood is a newer venue. So that was like a big outdoor venue that wasn't available. I think they were only open last fest, but they weren't a fest venue. And then the Fourth Ave Food Park, again, is like a much newer spot in Gainesville. And I think it's just more because the Gainesville, like a lot of places closed down both during COVID, but also just in general are not venues anymore. And a lot of places opened up as well over the last like 2 years. So a lot of the venues were different, which like, you know, people go to Fest and the Atlantic is kind of a place where you see a lot of mid-sized bands, but that wasn't a venue this year. Whereas Heartwood is a lot bigger of a stage. So it kind of offered a space for bands that might have been a little too big for places like the Woolly or the Atlantic or High Dive. But, you know, now that Heartwood was there, it kind of created a nice open space where you can like be comfortable, because no one was ever happy about being crammed into High Dive, like, you know, prior years before. And a lot of the times you might have to miss a band because they were at a venue that was over capacity. But I think between Fest having a lot less tickets available and a lot less people going than normal, it kind of offered this feeling of like everything's chill. I don't have to wait in long lines outside of venues. Overall, I think this fest was a lot of fun. You know, the venues that could handle a lot of people were the ones where they had a lot of the bands, and, you know, like a lot of the Heartwood soundstage bands in particular. But a lot of the other smaller venues weren't packed like they normally are. And for me personally, I felt comfortable. Like they were full, but they weren't like at capacity, impossible to get in. Like, especially the first few years I went to Fest, that was the case.
I caught a glimpse of you playing trombone solo with Catbite. So, like, tell me about that. Like, what was that like? How did it come about you playing a solo with that band?
Yeah, so actually, a lot of the ska bands, we've all been friends with each other forever. Like Tim, the guitarist of Catbite, used to play in another band called the Snails, which I've known about that band from back in the day. And that goes for every band. Like Bad Operation, I played trombone for them, but they used to play in a lot of bands that I've known since high school. And we've known each other through mutual friends for like almost 10 years now. And that's just the case for all the ska bands. So typically, like, you know, it's always fun to have guest musicians run up on stage. Like Food from Kill Lincoln, their sax player, also played a song with Catbite a few songs before I went up on stage with them. And that was actually planned, but the PA ended up cutting out during their set because that was an issue all night. And so I just went up early. I was like, you know what? There's no PA. The vocals aren't cutting through. So let's just make a trombone solo. Which people thought that I just did that because the PA cut out. But I mean, hey, it added to the effect.
And let me ask you, what's the biggest takeaway you got from this fest?
The biggest takeaway was that I love playing live music with my friends. That's something I never took for granted before the pandemic, but I definitely want to express appreciation for that a lot more before the pandemic, especially a couple months before. Being a musician who has been involved in like the scene for a long time, I know a lot of people, and a lot of the times when my friends roll through Florida, they'll give me a guest list spot. I can go to a show for free. I can bring friends with me. And I would ask people, hey, who wants to go to this show? And people would always just be like, I don't feel like going. And I'm like, y'all, it's free. Just show up with me and we can go to a show for free. And like people never wanted to go. And so then like the pandemic hit and people are like, oh, I miss music. And I'm like, well, y'all didn't appreciate appreciate it when it was handed to you for free before this. And like someone who grew up in South Florida in the early 2010s, we had a venue down there called the Talent Farm, and that was like the home. Like bands always went to South Florida because of it. And when the Talent Farm got shut down, like our local scene just completely fell apart because there was nowhere to play shows. Bands eventually stopped touring through South Florida, and it was no longer a destination spot. And I like kind of watched the effects of like having something that you don't really think about being taken away and watching the devastating effects that that could have. So for me, ever since then in 2014, when it got shut down, I never took live music for granted. Every time I played a venue, I was like, this venue could be gone tomorrow. Like Fest could be, something could happen where Fest is no longer a festival. So I always appreciated stuff like that. I always appreciated live music because I watched it happen in my own scene. And I feel like that's something that not a lot of other people really like thought of in that way. So COVID kind of reminded people that nothing, like this is all finite, you know, like these things can go away. So watching Fest happen this year and everyone was just so grateful to be in the moment and be there, I think was like really great. And it's like, I don't know how it went for all of Fest, but none of the ska bands, everyone tested negative for COVID. So we were all safe as well. We're able to do this thing and be safe. So just for everyone to be safe and look out for each other and be appreciative of music was, I think, my biggest takeaway. Okay.
How does the fest help identify what Gainesville means to people?
So I think for those who know about Fest, because Fest is weird. It's like a lot of people do know about it, but there's also a lot of people that have no idea it exists, especially as someone who moved to Gainesville. Like part of why I moved to Gainesville is because of Fest. Like I went to my first Fest because a few of my favorite bands were announced playing in 2014. And I was like, I don't even know what this is. I have some friends that live in Gainesville, but I don't know much about it aside from UF. So let me go to Gainesville for this festival. And I went here and I experienced like downtown Gainesville. I experienced, like the Top and Karma Cream and Reggae Shack and all of these places. And like, for me, that's what I knew Gainesville as. I didn't know anything about UF. I knew about like the culture of downtown, like the music scene and the punk culture and all that. So for me, that was like the identifier of Gainesville. So when I like eventually I moved here because I was like, I want to be in a town like that has all of this music and stuff. And I did experience that when moving here. But as I started, especially working for marching bands and getting involved, like meeting people from Gainesville, none of them know about any of that. Like whenever I talk about places to eat, people will always bring up places in Butler Plaza. Like, oh yeah, there's like a cheesecake factory and there's Olive Garden. But I'm like, have y'all ever been to like the Top? And like no one knows what that is. And I'm like, how do y'all grow up in Gainesville and not know about the Top? How do you not know about like Reggae Shack or like If It Is or any of these like places in downtown? And it's like, to me, it's almost like there's two separate Gainesvilles. There's like the downtown local scene Gainesville where like the Fest is like, a big part of that. And then there's like the college side of Gainesville, which is like, that's where a lot of more people know. And so I think for those who do know about like the local music scene in that part of Gainesville, it's like, that's a huge, if not one of the biggest things that Gainesville is known for, because it's a very active part of Gainesville. There's a lot of other music that comes out of Gainesville and there's a lot of other things going on. But as far as things that are like really active, I feel like the Fest and the punk scene is one of the bigger active things, because Fest also puts on shows throughout the year. They did the Fest warm up in August. Before COVID, they did Death Protector Fest, which is like smaller. That's basically if like one Fest venue had one show, that's what Death Protector would be. It's like 10 or 12 bands playing at like Boca Fiesta or the Woolly or the Atlantic. And so they have events that happen throughout the year that help kind of solidify this whole music community that happens here in Gainesville. So yeah, I think it's very much a huge identifier of Gainesville, especially in the music scene. It puts Gainesville on the map, that where most other music scenes don't really think about Gainesville. Like the hip hop music scene doesn't think about Gainesville at all, or like the, when you start playing jazz, it's like you'll never really see jazz artists go here unless it's to play at the university. But like punk bands will come through Gainesville because it's such a staple of a venue. As Less Than Jake put it, who is also from Gainesville, they have a song called Gainesville Rock City, because like rock music and alternative and punk is truly a staple to this town.
Well, that's all for today. Be sure to follow us on your favorite listening and viewing platform. Thanks for listening. Stay safe and enjoy the rest of your day.